The story takes place during a time of economic hardship, with widespread poverty, business failures, and job losses. Dave, a husband and father, has been unemployed for 3 months since losing his job. Despite his efforts to provide for his family, he struggles to make ends meet and faces mounting financial pressures. With no savings left and bills piling up, Dave is forced to move out of his current home as he can no longer afford the mortgage. His wife Alice and their 2 children, Riley and Mary, are also feeling the strain of their situation, with Riley in particular struggling to come to terms with their poverty. Despite Dave's attempts to reassure his family, Riley remains silent and withdrawn, clearly aware of the struggles they are all facing. Dave and his family made a stop at a rest area to grab a bite to eat and rest for a bit. However, Alice caused a scene over a small charge of $10 for fries, claiming that she never ordered them. Despite the small amount, Alice refused to pay and created an awkward situation for the family. Their journey continued, and they finally arrived at their destination, a remote location nestled in the mountains, surrounded by towering trees and thick forests. Riley, however, was not impressed with the old wooden house they were to call home and remained sullen and uncommunicative for several days. When asked about her behavior, Riley expressed her desire to attend school like other children. Her mother, Alice, however, dismissed the idea and declared that they did not need to attend school as she and Dave would teach them everything they needed to know. Mary and Riley were playing a game in the forest behind their new home, trying to find joy and positivity in their current situation. Despite the stark contrast to their previous life of convenience and modern comforts, they tried to make the best of their simple life without money or fast food. However, they couldn't ignore the reality that they were not fully prepared to live in such conditions. The next day, a building and safety inspector arrived to assess the suitability of the house that Dave had purchased at a heavily discounted price using his savings. The inspection uncovered several safety hazards, including issues with electricity, the sanitation, and the roof, rendering the house uninhabitable. Riley and Mary were playing in the forest behind their house when Mary suddenly disappeared. Riley found her chatting with a strange man named Eric, who was gathering tree branches in the forest. Eric and his wife had been living in the forest for a long time, and they were more familiar with the area than Dave's family. Mary noticed that Eric was carrying a rifle for protection against the wild animals that roamed the forest, including bears and monkeys. This revelation made Alice uncomfortable, and she argued with Dave about moving back to the city. However, they had no money to make such a move. The following day, Dave and Eric were teaching Riley how to shoot when Eric asked Alice if she liked living in their new home. Dave responded that Alice was having a tough time adjusting to the new environment, and he mentioned that she had a mood disorder that caused her to experience extreme mood swings. Later that day, Riley realized that her father needed some tools to dig the ground for sanitation purposes. She took it upon herself to ask Eric if he had any tools, but unfortunately, he did not. Undeterred, she sought out another neighbor, Steve, who had also moved to the area from the city due to financial difficulties. Unlike Dave and his family, Steve and Eric had already become accustomed to living in the forest and its limited conditions. As the husbands were busy digging the soil for sanitation, Alice was being taught how to shoot by her wife Steve and Eric. Meanwhile, Riley was playing in the forest with Steve's daughter, Lana, who talked non-stop. Lana invited Riley to an old hut where they found beer cans that had been stored for a long time. Despite Riley's refusal, Lana forced her to drink the beer and became angry when she declined. As Riley tried to escape, Lana suddenly attacked and beat her, crying and claiming that it was unintentional. In response, Alice immediately slapped Lana, and Dave kept his distance to prevent any further conflict. However, a few days later, Dave faced a new problem when Alice ran out of medicine for her illness. Her strange mood swings returned, causing disruptions in their already challenging lives due to financial difficulties. Alice would go from being happy and smiling one moment to sad and moody the next, putting a strain on Dave and his family. As time went on, Riley and Mary appeared increasingly disheveled and covered in small wounds inflicted by Alice, who had been intentionally locked up by Dave. When they were finally allowed to go out, they went to a shop under the mountain to buy tools. Riley, who hadn't had any snacks for weeks, couldn't resist stealing some candy and snacks, which were discovered by the shopkeeper's mother. Instead of scolding them, she looked at them with pity, noticing their dirty appearance and small wounds from playing in the forest behind their house. This made Riley question whether her parents truly cared for them, prompting Dave to take them home and ask the shopkeeper's mother not to interfere in their family affairs. Despite living a simpler life in the mountains, Dave and his family appeared to be sinking deeper into depression due to their ongoing struggles. Dave and Steve would spend their days drinking and venting their economic woes by shooting at old cars. Alice's condition also continued to worsen, as she had no money to buy medicine or see a doctor. Once upon a time, Dave's family was visited by the Child Protection Social Service. The shopkeeper's mother had reported that Dave's children were not being properly taken care of. The social worker inspected the messy house and saw that Alice's condition was getting worse. As a result, they decided to take custody of Riley and Mary, which led to a heated dispute and Dave's arrest. In the end, Riley and Mary were taken to the city and were adopted by a deserving family. They were given a good education, nice clothes, and a comfortable home. However, despite all of the luxuries, Riley was not happy. She missed her old home in the mountains and longed to be with her parents again. Even though she didn't enjoy living in the mountains, she found peace and contentment when she was with her family. Once upon a time, Dave was visiting his daughter down the mountain, and he was eager to bring his beloved daughters, Riley and Mary, back home with him. Alice's condition was still poor, and he was worried about their well-being. When the social worker went to the restroom, Dave seized the opportunity to reunite with his children. However, things quickly took a turn for the worse when the police arrived and surrounded Dave's house, accusing him of kidnapping his own children. Determined to protect his family and his home, Dave armed himself with a shotgun and refused to let the police in. As the standoff continued, the police attempted a new tactic, blasting loud rock music in an effort to drive Dave and his family out of the house. However, instead of surrendering, the family embraced the music and danced together, undeterred by the chaotic situation. 2 days passed, and Dave and his family remained holed up in the house. With their food supply running dangerously low, Dave made the difficult decision to call 911 and request food for his starving children. But instead of providing aid, the authorities immediately demanded that Dave surrender his family. As night fell, Eric arrived with food and was granted permission to enter the house by the police. He attempted to reason with Dave and persuade him to surrender peacefully, emphasizing the safety of his daughter and wife. However, Dave was not receptive to Eric's advice and instead became defensive, kicking him out of the house and demanding that he stay out of their family affairs. As Dave escorted Eric to the front door, a gunshot rang out, grazing Dave's arm and striking Alice in the stomach. Filled with anger and despair, Dave turned his rage on the police and began firing back at them. It was a dangerous and chaotic situation, with lives hanging in the balance. In the midst of the chaos, Riley finally spoke up, confronting his father's selfishness and his failure to put his family first. Dave was struck by his son's words and was finally able to see the error of his ways. Overwhelmed with emotion and regret, he made the difficult decision to surrender and put an end to the nightmare that had consumed their lives. The message of this movie is clear: balance is key to a fulfilling life. Even in the simplicity of life, it is essential to consider basic needs such as food, shelter, and health, as well as our relationships with those closest to us, like family and friends. By finding this balance, we can achieve true happiness and avoid the pitfalls of extremism and selfishness. It's a lesson that we can all learn from and apply in our own lives.